Whose idea was it to have carbon tax Carney work for your party so he would be shielded from the law you obviously knew he would break?
Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David, and today's top stories, we've got Kevin O'Leary absolutely obliterating Justin Trudeau, and not just Justin Trudeau, but another member of his cabinet. We've got some updates from other Liberal ministers saying stupid things in Parliament once again. We've also got some clips from the House of Commons of Pierre Poilievre demolishing Trudeau on GDP as well as housing in Canada. So let's jump into this. Kevin O'Leary is back at it. This time he's on this Full Send podcast, just absolutely obliterates Trudeau. He's done it multiple times. He gets more and more savage every time he talks about Trudeau.
You never spoken to Trudeau, have you?
No, I don't like that guy. Not because he's a bad person. He's just a horrible manager. He's the worst prime minister the country's ever had. And I spend a lot of my time explaining why he's so bad, because there's an election coming up. It could happen any week, actually. He's down to he's one non-confidence vote away. Parliamentary system from Britain, you need to have a coalition that keeps you in power. Your cabinet keeps you in power. When people start to lose confidence in you, you start making alliances with your competitors. In his case, the NDP, which is a socialist party. But now they don't like him either. And so he's very, very in very precarious position. But he's had a great run over 9 years, brought the country to its knees, unbelievably bad management. The way you should do it in the parliamentary system is you're the prime minister. You don't have to run anything. What you have to do is hire good managers for the seats of finance, military procurement, environment, these different cabinet positions. You hire them and you put these people in place.
We all know where this is going. He's going to rip Chrystia Freeland. She's just a reporter.
And they work for you. Now, if you don't have any skill at that, you're screwed. For example, he put a journalist in for finance minister with no skills whatsoever in finance, never ran a bank. I mean, why would you do that? And of course, she's a total failure. It's unfair to put her in that position. She decimated the company. Capital's leaving Canada like crazy. When she started, it was coming into the country. Now it's leaving. I mean, like, it's sad. It's just sad. It's so unfair to her to do that to her. I mean, imagine when she goes to a G7 meeting or G20 meeting, everybody in there is from the banking sector, global banking. And she's a journalist. I mean, they must look at her and say, why are you here? Do you want an interview with me? I mean, I just can't imagine what that's like. Anyways, we got to get rid of him. I can't say enough bad stuff. I spent a lot of time saying it. I go up there and I point it out to people. But remember, you got to respect the success he's had. He's one of the most successful prime ministers in history. Staying in power that long with absolutely no executional skills is remarkable.
And the amount of money he's made, squeezing it out of us. I'm sure his investments are through the roof. He's made a lot of money off a whole lot of suffering in Canada.
It's just remarkable. What he's going to do afterwards? Well, he won't be running any of my businesses, I'll tell you that. I mean, my goodness, you wouldn't put that guy in a candy store. They'll go bankrupt in the first 48 hours.
He's the most hated prime minister. I'm from Mississauga, so
yeah,
well, a few of us are Canadian.
You know what I'm talking about.
You go to Alberta, and he's just like...
No, I do go to Alberta. Yeah. I do go to Alberta.
It's crazy.
Yeah, they want to leave. Alberta wants to leave Canada. They can't take it anymore. They have all the wealth there, and they're paying for all of his mistakes. I went to I was going to go to a wedding in Egypt recently. I was going to go fly there, and I showed my Canadian passport. They said, "Oh no Canadians. You need a visa." I said, "What? I'm a Canadian. Everybody loves us." He said, "No, they don't. We don't love you. Your guy came down here and pissed off every Egyptian." I didn't even know he did that.
What did he do?
I have no idea, but they wouldn't let me in the country. Same with India. He pissed off the Indians. This guy took a golden passport and turned it into shit.
India, I mean, he pissed off Modi there. He just keeps insulting. He accused... he made a massive accusation against the Indian government. Trudeau is just the biggest bonehead ever.
Could you possibly do that? He shouldn't ever go anywhere. Don't say anything. Don't go anywhere. Stay in a closet and be quiet for now. because you're killing the country. I had no idea that had happened. I had to use my Irish passport to get into. I'm very fortunate. I have an Irish, I have a Canadian, and I have an Emirati residency card. I want to become an Emirati citizen. I love that country. And I tell you, that guy is bad news. And I'm just telling the truth here. It's very important that he move on. Very, very important. Richest country on earth per capita in terms of resources, run by idiots. That's
Sad.
That's what Canada is. And it's got to change.
This is one of the longer interviews with Kevin O'Leary, and he really just ripped into the Liberals. You don't usually hear him talk that much about Chrystia Freeland and just how bad she is, and she's just not cut out for the job. I've mentioned this multiple times. Why would you have a journalist running the finance department? It makes no sense. Every one of those departments should be run by experts. The Minister of Transportation should be some sort of engineer, like transportation engineer. The Minister of like minerals should be like a geologist or someone who has a lot of knowledge in that area. They shouldn't just be your groomsmen from 15 years ago and you just chuck them in positions and hope for the best. I didn't know Kevin could be so funny. Maybe it's because it's so late and my stomach hurts. I watched this twice. You guys are awesome. It's remarkable that JT lasted so long and is one of the most famous PMs for doing so without any skill whatsoever for the job. What I find remarkable is how the Liberal caucus swallowed this Bologna hook, line and sinker, never noticed. That's the problem when you have a prime minister's kid. Some people just seem to think, oh, you're the prime minister's son, so you must have just inherited all that knowledge from your dad. But that is not the case. Not like his dad was a great prime minister either, but he didn't inherit that. I mean, clearly the lessons he learned were not good lessons because Trudeau is the worst prime minister in Canadian history. We got this here. It's Immigration Minister Mark Miller confirms that there's a large number of international students who are seeking asylum after the first year in Canada. He blames universities and colleges for inadequate screening processes. Oh, really? Are they the ones in charge of this, Mark Miller? Does he not want to know what his job is?
Can you tell us how many international students do claim asylum while they're here on student visas?
There's a growing number, Mercedes, and it's frankly quite alarming, given the volumes of people that come to this country, in theory, with the proper financial capacity to live and to pay their tuition fees, which are 4 times what Canadians pay. But it's becoming an alarming trend. We see that it happens often within the first year of the time they're here. I would say often for less valid reasons than others, notably to drop the tuition fee down to Canadian rates. There's some opportunism that's being used and exploited there. It goes to the point that I've been making to universities, colleges, to make sure that their recruiting practices are better, that they make sure that the type of people that we are attracting under what should be a world-class student visa program is one where people don't turn around and, after they've paid all sorts of money to come here and claim asylum.
World-class visa program, really? You're bringing in the worst of the worst, man, and he knows it.
This is a program that was aimed at international excellence and not a backdoor entry into Canada for whatever reason. And that's, part and parcel of the reforms that I've been doing over the better part of the year to make sure that we have a better international student visa system, including detecting fraud at the outset, which is immensely critical, but also looking at the timeline and making sure that that students are here and making sure that they are properly accompanied by the institutions that take so much money from them and in theory are supposed to give them the best education in the world, but looking at the after effects of that and how that impacts the Canadian economy, and less on that short-term gain than more looking at the impact and the long-term pain that this has created, including the burden of making false or less credible asylum claims.
This man is one of the greatest failures in Canadian government history. Justin Trudeau right at the top. You've got this guy, Sean Fraser, Chrystia Freeland, like they're all stacking the deck there right at the top. Just like Trudeau, I mean, I'm sure these guys, they grew up together, they're childhood friends. They've both not learned how to take accountability for their actions. Spoiled rich kids who don't know how to say, that's my fault. Sorry, I'll do better. They don't know that. Wow, that's terrible. If only had a government minister whose job it was to make sure these things aren't happening. Blame the universities for inadequate screenings. What arrogance and incompetence to blame somebody else for your lack of screening process. You're responsible for ensuring that loopholes are taken out. You're relying on other people to do your screening and thinking for you. I got this clip here I thought was pretty funny. We've got the whole Liberal den of thieves standing here.
Today, we are launching Canada's first ever action plan on combating hate. The plan represents a $273 million commitment from our government that will support over 20 initiatives, first and foremost to empower communities and identify and respond to hate.
Maybe you guys should identify and respond to it that already exists in the streets of Montreal and Toronto. I have an entire video on my second channel, because I can never get those clips on here, where those people with the white and the green red flags are calling for the end of people of Israel. Maybe you should start there. Liberal Anthony Housefather even tweeted that out and said, maybe the police should look into this. A liberal tweeted that. Maybe you guys should look into this.
Support victims and protect survivors, and to build community trust and improve institutional readiness.
Build community trust. How do you think people living in Toronto and Montreal feel, especially if you're from Israel? So next up, to lighten things up here, we've got Jagmeet saying Andrew Scheer laughs at him in the House of Commons. Says Jagmeet Singh is immediately drowned up with laughter in the House of Commons. Andrew Scheer can be seen laughing so hard he's in tears. Singh, meanwhile, appears to be reverting to his totally insane campaign strategy of running against a grocery chain, Loblaws.
$100 for a doctor's appointment. For-profit corporations like Loblaws are forced...
Colleagues, it's important for the person who has the floor to take the floor.
$100 for a doctor's appointment. For-profit corporations like Loblaws are forcing patients to pay to see a doctor. Now, the Conservatives love this because their chief strategist, Jenny Byrne, also doubles as a chief lobbyist for Loblaws.
Jagmeet just loves to go after Loblaws. You know, he's got to help his brother out. Sellout Singh and his minions will vote against Canadians. All who vote to silence Canadians are traitors to this country. Look at these guys. We got another one here posted by Conservative Senator Leo Housakos. It says, unbelievable. The Liberals think Canadians should be thanking them for hiring carbon tax Carney.
10th, Mark Carney signed on as your government's de facto finance minister, but he isn't a PCO appointment. Instead, he works for the Liberal Party of Canada, and as such, he isn't subject to the Ethics and Conflict of Interest Act. 1 week after he started his job for the Liberal Party, we know why that distinction was made for carbon tax Carney. On September 17th, Carney, as chair of Brookfield Asset Management, secured a deal with the Trudeau government that will see that company receive $10 billion in taxpayer funds to set up an equity fund to oversee Canadian pensions. 1 week later, as Minister for Democratic Institutions, did you have concerns about this arrangement? Was it your suggestion to not have carbon tax Carney as a PCO appointment, or was it Justin Trudeau's? Whose idea was it to have carbon tax Carney work for your party so he would be shielded from the law you obviously knew he would break?
It's hilarious that they refer to him as carbon tax Carney. They know what he's calling him, Mark Carney. It's so funny, even in the Senate.
Madame la Présidente, vous me permettez. Madam Speaker, if I may, I would like to greet you. It's a great pleasure for me to see someone from my province here as the Speaker of this chamber. It's great. This is sort of a repeat of what I saw at 2:15 in the other place. Same kind of silly little phrases, carbon tax Carney. Somebody who served Prime Minister Harper as Governor of the Bank of Canada. I would think that you would be proud that eminent Canadians come forward to volunteer in a political party, to participate in the political process. If you want to make a series of derogatory comments under privilege and talking about him breaking laws, you do so in this chamber. I'd be more careful if you repeated it outside to say that Governor Carney, in fact, broke the law. I'm happy that he's helping our government with economic growth policy, and I think Canadians should be reassured that people of his caliber step forward to volunteer in the political process. And of all people, I would think you'd be happy when people volunteer in the political process.
Minister, the only thing that Mr. Carney, carbon tax Carney, has helped is grow the portfolio of the companies he represents on the first day that he's been on this job. When you were Fisheries Minister, you had your own conflict of interest scandal with the awarding of a lucrative fishing license to a family member who didn't even own a boat. So you should know full well why these rules and conflict of interest guidelines are in place. If it wasn't your idea to have carbon tax Carney subject to our ethics law, did you at least try to advise against it, or were you in full agreement with having him work for the Liberal Party of Canada and not the Government of Canada?
Simieritsch.
Madam Speaker, I wouldn't propose to correct a senior parliamentarian like Senator Houssakos. He knows very well that fishing license was not awarded. He knows very well that the proponent was an Indigenous community and not an individual. So again, if you can invent a series of facts here, as I said in the previous answer, I'm pleased that Mark Carney, somebody who served previous governments both in this country and other important allies of Canada in Europe in a very senior economic capacity, has decided to come forward and provide advice to a political party. As I say, some people here may be shocked by that. I wouldn't have thought that Senator Houssakos would have been one of them.
Dominic is just such a weaselly little rat. This guy's going to go down with the ship with Trudeau all the way to the bottom of the ocean. LeBlanc is a sleazeball. I'm ashamed of this from New Brunswick. Just the look of him screams corruption. It's unbelievable indeed. As a Canadian, I thank you for asking good, tough questions. It's unbelievable he can get away with his flippant, vague answers. It's clear what the Liberals are doing. Appreciate your effort. Keep up the good work. Yeah, I mean, these Liberals, they should be thrown in jail for not answering questions and answering them honestly. Next up, let's take a look at Pierre Poilievre and Justin Trudeau going head-to-head on GDP and housing in Canada. Spoiler alert, Justin Trudeau gets humiliated again.
2015. New York Times. Headline. Life in Canada, home of the world's most affluent middle class. How things have changed after 9 years of NDP Liberals. The economy today per capita is actually smaller than it was 10 years ago. Per capita income has dropped more in Canada than any other G7 country since the year before COVID. The gap between U.S. GDP per capita and Canadian is now 50%, the biggest gap in 100 years. Will the Prime Minister recognize that taxing, punishing, and attacking our businesses is losing us jobs?
The Leader of the Opposition refuses to accept is that cuts to services and programs that Canadians are relying on is not going to grow the economy, is not going to help anyone through. We have the strongest balance sheet in the G7 right now, the lowest deficit, the lowest debt to GDP ratio. Companies from around the world are investing in Canada because they believe in Canadians. We are wanting to set that strong fiscal position in service of Canadians who are hurting right now. We want to invest more in dental, more in supports, more in growth and jobs, and he wants to cut at this particular time.
I swear Trudeau just rolls out of bed, comes in here, makes up a bunch of lies, and then leaves. That's all he does. He's getting paid $400,000 to do that.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, Canada has the worst mortgage debt, has had the worst housing inflation in the G7, and now has the worst GDP per capita change since the Great Depression, and the worst by far in the G7. Those are the devastating statistics that result in very real human costs. That's the reason we have 1,400 homeless encampments in one province alone and 2 million people lined up at food banks. Won't he realize that doubling housing costs and taxing people's food has very real human costs?
Mr. Speaker, when that individual was Harper's failed housing minister, he built 6 affordable homes across the entire country only. He did not help with the investments that Canadians needed. And his so-called housing plan that he talks about now, which is, again, more performance than substance, lots of slogans, no actual solutions, is not going to deliver for Canadians either. We're doing what he didn't do, which is work with housing advocates, work with municipalities, work with provinces, and deliver the homes Canadians need.
We have the lowest amount of housing starts ever. I got builders who send me messages saying there's nothing going on. They should be working 100 hours a week. They're not doing anything. The people aren't even building stuff because the supplies cost too much. They're all kind of going in hibernation right now, waiting for Trudeau to get thrown out so prices can go back down, then get back to building houses. All Justin Trudeau does is lie. He lies to us, he lies to himself, he lies to everyone.
When I was housing minister, rent and mortgage payments were half of what they are now, and there were almost 200,000 of those affordable homes built right across Canada. Now, this Prime Minister wants to bring in a massive tax on home builders with hikes to capital gains. Now, the most preeminent economist in Canada, Jack Mintz, reveals that would cost our economy 400,000 jobs and $90 billion. Where are those 400,000 unemployed Canadians going to be able to get the food and the money to pay their mortgages?
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition is instrumentalizing Canadians who are suffering right now to try and score cheap political points. What he is not offering is any sort of solution for Canadians. We put forward the most ambitious housing plan in decades because we know that working with municipalities, working with provinces, working with nonprofit agencies and charitable foundations is a way of delivering homes. I was just in Vancouver speaking to a young student who got into an apartment because of partnerships that this government set up. These are things that make a real difference in people's lives, but he doesn't care.
This guy quite literally brings in over 1 million people a year, increases the carbon tax, making building more expensive. We have housing starts going down, probably well below 200,000 houses a year now, putting us at a 5x deficit of what we actually need. And he has the audacity to stand up here as if he's some sort of messiah, that he's so good for Canada, he's doing all these great things. How many times are we going to have people humiliate Justin Trudeau? Whether it's the Conservatives, we've got celebrities, we've got police forces in Canada, we've got premiers, even other Liberals. How many people are going to have to humiliate Justin Trudeau, including Kevin O'Leary, before the man steps down? If you guys are looking for something a little bit more relaxing, I just put up a hiking video on my I'd Rather Be Hiking YouTube channel where I hike up a backcountry route no one has ever filmed before.
That was absolutely brutal. It was not what I was signed up for, David. I thought we were in for a leisurely walk in the woods this weekend.
It's a leisurely 40 kilometers. You're not going to see it anywhere else. We're just kind of risking it here. This is epic. It's absolutely majestic. So if you want to check that out, I'll link that up right here. Be sure to subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.